2020. The Naked Truth. Summer sun, beach, bodies, and beauty. Can you get ahead without it? How far would you go to look great?
You're showing a foreign object into somebody's mouth.
The latest diet craze or just crazy? The tongue patch.
My tongue hurts talking about this. I think it's ridiculous.
Hold your tongue. And what if you could look like Hugh Jackman without having to get jacked?
It's for you, right?
Wives, this is for you. How to take your hubbies from flab to fab in just 60 minutes with no exercise. Extreme fakeover. Plus, what if your beauty cost you your job?
Her only crime was looking too good.
Fired for being too tempting to her dentist boss.
So you're responsible for your boss who can't control himself. You're fired.
Too hot to work? Tonight, we're letting you in on The Naked Truth. Here's Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. David Muir is off tonight. Want more friends, more money, even more sex? Then research says be better looking. It is the naked truth of lookism, especially during these stripped-down summer months. In fact, just this week, a New Jersey judge ruled that some Atlantic City casino waitresses, the so-called Borgata babes, could be legally fired for putting on weight. So, how to lose it? Just take a look at the newest diet craze that might have you saying, hold your tongue, literally. Here's Cecilia Vega.
From the surgical, think liposuction, stomach stapling, and the lap band, to scary, like the cotton ball diet.
I've heard of people eating the cotton balls with the orange juice, and it makes you think you're full, but you're not.
To the downright disgusting. That's not a jar of noodles. It's the main ingredient in the tapeworm diet.
Everybody looks like they want to vomit
You dine out, while the parasite dines in your digestive tract. There's seemingly no limit to the lengths people will go to lose it. And if you thought the story we brought you last year about the feeding tube diet was extreme,
I'm down 2 dress sizes.
well, wait until you see this.
I am determined to lose weight.
I'm willing to do anything at this point. I'm so desperate to lose the weight.
These two women are about to have a piece of hard plastic mesh sewn onto their tongues. It will inflict pain if they try to eat any solid food. Marlene Beltran weighs 169 pounds because of her out-of-control appetite.
I get like cravings. Like in the middle of the night, I'll just be like, oh, I want a brownie or I want ice cream. This time I'm just really motivated because I am almost 21 and I do have plans and I want to look my best and feel good.
I love eating everything.
Lysander Lanuza is 200 pounds of all you can eat.
American food, Filipino food, Korean. It's heaven.
Their goal is to each lose 20 pounds in 1 month. Marlene wants to begin dating. Lysander has a bikini and a deadline.
In a month's time, I'll be going to Hawaii. I'll be wearing this bikini, and hopefully I'll be looking great.
So this is our patch, and we put it right on the interior portion of her tongue.
It's called the tongue patch. Cosmetic surgeon Dr. Nicholas Chagay introduced the procedure in the U.S. 4 years ago after first seeing it done in Latin America.
I thought, this is a good way to help people lose weight quickly.
The first stitch is already in. I'm just going to put 4 knots on it. Make sure it stays in there.
He said the way it works was if you eat solid food, your tongue rolls back and it would cause pain.
Chagay says Lysander is his 81st patient as he pioneers the process here in what is arguably the plastic surgery capital of the country, Southern California. But that's nothing compared to body-conscious Venezuela. One clinic in Caracas has stitched patches on more than 800 tongues.
Is the goal of the tongue patch so that your tongue hurts when you go to swallow food?
It's a pattern interrupt. When patients want to swallow food, they realize, hey, I cannot do that. That's why I have this patch here. So it reminds them.
But you're sewing a foreign object into somebody's mouth. Is that healthy?
Well, it's not unhealthy.
Hey, the surgery's all finished. Wow.
I can't find my tongue.
She'll be able to speak normally in a few hours when the anesthetic wears off. But all that greasy fried food she loves, forget it. It's a strict 800 calorie per day liquid diet of bad shakes and low-cal beverages until the patch is removed in 1 month.
How much weight guaranteed to lose with a tongue patch?
I cannot say that you're guaranteed, but an average weight loss is anywhere from 18 to 20 pounds in that 1 month's diet.
18 to 20 pounds at a cost of $2,000. Seem hard to swallow? Maybe. Lysander is paying full price, but Dr. Shige is doing Marlene's procedure for free because we are recording it.
I was told that food gets stuck on the patch too, so even if you want to cheat a little, you get caught because it gets
My
stuck.
tongue hurts talking about that with you.
No, I'm not nervous about the pain or anything. I'm kind of excited.
On the morning of her appointment, Marlene is more concerned about organizing all the clothes she hopes to soon be able to wear.
Okay, so these are all jeans.
Like these are still brand new.
They have the tags on. Did you buy them thinking you were going to fit into these at some point?
Yeah, I did, and then once they didn't fit, I was just like, oh, I'll lose the weight and I'll fit into them. That never happened.
You ready? All right. Stick your tongue out for us. Good. Perfect.
Dr. Shige reminds her that as of now, she's on that same low-calorie liquid diet.
And 3 times a day, you start taking that, okay? And no cheating. No Twinkies.
After only 10 minutes, the patch is in place.
Good girl. All done.
What's it feel like?
I can't talk.
That seemed pretty easy. It was quick.
You don't feel it.
You don't feel it. Have you ever received any flack from colleagues in the medical community for this?
No, I haven't.
Dr. Shige, meet Dr. Christine Petty.
I think it's ridiculous.
And Dr. Rob Huizenga.
I think it's a barbaric procedure.
She's also a plastic surgeon.
I could never advise a procedure that would cause a patient pain. Pain is not a good thing for anybody.
Start today.
Better known as Dr. H, he specializes in long-term weight loss, spending 14 seasons as an expert on The Biggest Loser.
This is so primitive an approach. You could hire somebody to hold a gun next to your head and threaten to shoot you every time you eat. You could have somebody with a hammer hit you over the head every time you threaten to have something to eat.
Would you do this on your own body?
I would.
You haven't done it on any of your family members, have you?
Well, so far, no volunteers.
When we come back, what is it like living with a mesh patch stitched to your tongue? 3 days on America's most extreme diet.
And I want a burger really bad, a cheeseburger.
Will one of these women wish they had never done it?
I don't care if it's a bite, I just want a burger.
And will the weight come off? Stay with us. The results may surprise you.
Returns with the naked truth.
They say no pain, no gain, but this is turning that phrase on its tongue. 2 overweight women who can't control their eating, going to extremes to lose weight fast. A stiff plastic patch stitched right to their tongues will inflict a sharp pain if they try to eat any solid food.
How do you feel?
I feel good. My tongue's all swollen. I can't talk. It doesn't fit me anymore.
Lysander Lanuza
I'm a sucker for fried tacos.
and Marlene Beltran each hope to drop 20 pounds in 30 days.
After you get this tongue patch, you'll be able to wear these shorts?
Yeah.
Tracking the difficult diet in video diaries along the way. For Lysander, day 1 brings an immediate challenge.
This is what my mom cooks for breakfast, which I obviously can't eat.
Instead,
I'm actually doing my workout right now.
she cheerfully begins the requisite 45-minute daily exercise routine. But Lysander's social life is all about food, and day 1 brings another temptation.
This is my first dinner out with my friends.
She sips iced tea while her friends gorge on a buffet.
Yummy. So today's Father's Day, this is what we have served at the table.
Barbecue.
Fish. I cannot eat any of that. All I can eat is this. This is Diet Pepsi.
So far, so good.
Okay, sugar scale, I lost 3 pounds.
But across town, Marlene has a craving for just about everything.
Crazy because I don't like beef. Never liked them, won't eat them. But today, just looking at my mom eat beans made my mouth water.
By day 5, this food junkie has a bad need for a fix.
Lately, I've been craving an In-N-Out burger, like, really bad. And I want a burger really bad, a cheeseburger. I don't care if it's a bite, I just want a burger.
Somehow, Marlene resists her cravings. Lysander, not so much.
Well, I tried like a piece of popcorn we were at the movie theater and it hurts, so I'm like, forget it.
The popcorn hurt?
Yeah.
And are you thinking, yes, it's working, I don't want to eat?
No, I'm like, It does work. I can't eat.
Up.
Dr. Nicholas Shigay claims the miracle of the tongue patch is that it can act as a jumpstart to lasting weight loss.
It's really a life-changing type of a pattern. And it takes about 30 days to change a habit.
A small patch that can be life-changing.
Life-changing, exactly.
If I could say one thing, it's that the whole concept of jumpstart is absurd.
Weight loss expert Dr. Rob Huizenga points to studies that show how most extreme dieters who lose weight rapidly eventually gain it all back and more.
There's not one scintilla of hope or evidence that putting a patch on your tongue and not being able to eat for a month is going to have any effect on you at 1 year or 2 years or 3 years.
Dr. Shigay's son and partner, Dr. Paul Shigay, did submit a study that claims 70% of their patients lost an average of 16 pounds and kept it off for 8 months. But the American Academy of Cosmetic Surgery won't publish it without more data. No matter, Marlene is getting all the data she needs from her bathroom scales as the pounds fall away.
My double chin isn't as bad as it used to be. My arms are a lot thinner.
Lysander is also watching the pounds melt away.
So far, probably lost 15, 16 pounds.
I'm getting a lot more attention from guys, which is nice. It's attention I'm not used to, so I'm still adjusting to it.
That doesn't hurt, does it?
Finally, Liberation Day.
That's it.
I feel liberating.
Yes, isn't that liberating? Now, that wasn't so bad, huh?
No, you don't even feel it.
The final tally, Marlene loses 18 pounds. Remember those skinny jeans she couldn't wear before?
Now they're kind of big on me.
Lysander loses 23 pounds. And that bikini she wouldn't dare try on before? Aloha Lysander.
Once they take the patch off, we put them on a boot camp diet. It's a strict diet for another month. And then I prepare them for the regular maintenance diet that they'll stay on for the rest of their lives.
Or not. As hard as it was to live with the tongue patch, will it be even harder to keep the weight off without it?
I was sad the patch was coming off just because I felt like the hard part began. Now I'm on my own.
Really, I don't want to go through that again. It was really hard for me. I agree to the fact that it is really an extreme measure of losing weight.
You think it's extreme?
Yes, I do.
Is it crazy?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, comparable to the other diets that I know, yes, it is.
Clearly, Lysander, who paid $2,000 for her tongue patch, is not nearly as happy as the person who got it for free, Marlene.
It wasn't bad.
Look at you, you're smiling.
I would do it again. It was fun. The tongue patch is kind of addicting. You lose the weight and you see the results fast, so you want more.
So if you need to lose the weight, would you undergo something as extreme and painful as the tongue patch? Let us know on Twitter using the hashtag ABC2020.
Next, fired for being too tempting to her dentist boss.
This was a woman who did nothing to get herself fired, except bring her breasts to work.
So is he happy when we try to track him down? Returns with the naked truth.
When you go to the dentist, you want to know that he is focused on your teeth, not on his attractive young assistant. But in our next story, one dentist says he was so distracted by her beauty and the temptation she brought to his marriage that he fired her, and a court backed him up. Here's Paula Ferris.
Well, the cat's out of the bag. The beautiful get all the breaks. The pretty get all the perks. And the gorgeous get all the gigs.
Look at the waitresses.
Yeah? It really ticked off Elaine in this classic Seinfeld episode when she thought this diner would only hire well-endowed waitresses. You know what? That's discriminatory. Turns out it wasn't lookism. It was nepotism.
They're my daughters.
It wasn't so funny more recently when teen clothing retailer Abercrombie & Fitch CEO Mike Jeffries caused a plus-size controversy over comments they only go after the attractive all-American kids. And that's why they hire good-looking people in their stores. Amid plummeting sales, Abercrombie had to backtrack. But beauty bias can cut both ways.
I'm Melissa Nelson. I was fired because my boss thought I was too attractive.
Which brings us to Fort Dodge, Iowa, and their fields of opportunities. America's heartland for some twisted matters. matters of the heart.
All she ever wanted to do was be a dental assistant.
Steve is Melissa's high school sweetheart. They are married with 2 young children.
She wanted to work for Dr. Knight's office, so she job shadowed there. She got a job there, and everything fell into place. She loved her job.
33-year-old Melissa was the dental assistant for Dr. James Knight, by the dentist's side, 8 hours a day for a decade.
It was a fun working environment.
How did you view Dr. Knight?
I viewed him as a father figure, as a dad.
He was your mentor, right?
Very much so.
How close did the two of you get?
When we had both of our kids, his family came and visited him in the hospital.
Melissa says it was all a gas until the doc started pulling more than teeth. Once he hit 50, she says he was working out, pumping iron, and getting buff.
He became more confident and more outgoing.
Do you think he was going through a midlife crisis?
It's the only thing I could come up with.
The two had a friendly relationship, trading personal text messages during off hours. But then Melissa says it went from cordial to creepy.
He would ask me about my personal life. He would ask me how often I would have sex.
And Melissa says when she answered and implied not that often, the dentist offered this artful analogy. That's like having a Lamborghini in the garage and never driving it. And he warned his mentee, if you see my pants bulging, you'll know your clothes are too revealing. This was Melissa's standard issue scrub suit uniform, and occasionally on humid days, her lab coat was removed, revealing her 5'1" frame and a simple crew neck t-shirt.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a squirter, Dale.
It seemed to us strikingly similar to this scene from the movie Horrible Bosses.
Shabbat shalom, somebody circumcised.
Did you flirt with him?
No.
So there's no attraction?
Absolutely not.
Did you do anything to lead him on?
Never.
You must have done something.
I don't know what. I showed up for work every day.
Melissa says she brushed off her boss's comments for 6 months, hoping they would stop. But things came to a head when there was an exchange during non-business hours. The dentist's wife caught them texting each other while he was on vacation and made sure it would end.
His wife came in with a purple folder and just sat it on his desk and walked without saying anything.
Thus began a day at this dentist's office with more discomfort than a string of scheduled root canals. Talk about intervention. Dr. Knight even brought in his local pastor.
I found out later that it was his minister from church.
It's his pastor, it's you, and it's your boss.
Yes, the three of us sitting in an office.
Did you think, what the heck is going on?
Absolutely. I had no idea why I was in there.
And in that purple folder, a pink slip.
Dr. Knight said I couldn't work in the office because he was becoming attracted to me and not able to focus on his family and his family life.
What was your reaction to this? He can't control himself?
I instantly broke down in tears. All I remember is just sitting there and not able to get up, telling him that I love my job.
Melissa's husband rushed to the dentist's office.
I said, what's going on? Is there a mistake? He said, I've got feelings for your wife, and it's affecting my family, and he felt the best option to save his marriage was to terminate Missy, as he saw her as a threat. He told me several times that, he said, I want you to know, Steve, that your wife has done nothing wrong.
When he said he didn't feel like he could control himself, and that an affair might start down the road, what was your reaction?
I'm like, that's absurd. Why would those thoughts even cross his mind? This is my wife. Why is he thinking of her as an object? And it infuriated me.
And the news also infuriated some in this close-knit, reserved town of 25,000 people. We met Ruth and Jerry Hancock at the local malt shop, Nettie's.
I have just never seen her do anything inappropriate myself.
And then all of a sudden we find this attraction as being a reason to let her go. I don't think that that's justified.
After the firing, they found a new dentist. Now, Dr. Knight offered Melissa a month's severance for 10 years of stellar work, but Melissa vowed to fight tooth and nail.
The good news for the court is this might be the easiest case that you have all year.
When we come back, how Melissa decided to retaliate in a court of law.
This was a woman who did nothing to get herself fired, except, bring her breasts to work.
The dentist's surprising defense, and as an orthodontist might say, brace yourself, because you may not believe where else she took her case.
Open up and say, Melissa.
Stay with us.
returns with the naked truth.
Ever thought you could be too good looking for your own good? 33-year-old Melissa Nelson didn't either. But she was fired from her job as a dental assistant with a month's severance after 10 years simply because the 54-year-old dentist she worked for found her irresistibly attractive and a threat to his marriage.
I'm sure you remember the song I'm Too Sexy. Well, it seems it's actually possible to be too sexy for your job.
What was life like when you were working for him?
It was good. I was home with my kids overnight. We had just bought some land and I made the first payment and lost my job 2 days later.
I've read lots of comments of people who say, good for him, at least he was honest. A lot of men would have just slept with her.
Paige Fiddler is Melissa's attorney.
I can assure you, there's about a snowball's chance in hell that would have happened.
Seeking damages and lost pay, Melissa took her cause to the Iowa District Court in August 2010 and filed a gender discrimination suit against Dr. James Knight. But the judge dismissed the case before trial.
I was hurt. I think more than anything, I was hurt.
Dr. Knight declined our repeated requests for an interview, but his attorney told ABC News she was not terminated because of her gender, but to preserve the best interest of his marriage.
We had admission after admission after admission from the defendant himself that her sex played a part in his decision.
So, in December, Melissa appealed to the Iowa Supreme Court.
We are not allowed to discriminate against someone because of who God made them. Having breasts is pretty closely connected with being a woman.
But the 7 justices ruled that although the 1 month's severance was rather ungenerous, terminating an employee is okay, simply because the boss views the employee as an irresistible attraction, especially since the wife felt her marriage was threatened.
So you're responsible for your boss who can't control himself.
It's kind of what the Supreme Court has led us to believe.
I don't think the law is out of touch. I mean, this guy is a jerk, but being a jerk is not illegal.
Elia Shapiro is a senior fellow in constitutional studies at the Free Market Cato Institute.
You can fire someone for being tall, for being short, for cheering for the wrong team, for wearing the wrong color.
But you cannot be fired if you're part of a protected class, such as gender, race, or religion. Still, Shapiro says Melissa's case is not about gender. He's a man, she's a woman, he's attracted to her. How is it not a gender issue?
She was fired because he felt that their relationship was affecting his marriage.
All he had to do was control himself. How hard could that be?
Well, he feared that if he kept her on, then he might start harassing her.
He might start harassing her? He said, how often do you have orgasms? And if you see a bulge in my pants, it's because your clothes are too tight.
Well, it's inappropriate, but she didn't complain.
The court agreed, but in the court of public opinion, the ruling surprised and stung.
Her only crime was looking too good.
Bosses can legally fire any employee they see as an irresistible attraction.
If a man is saying that a woman is so irresistible that he's afraid he will sexually offend against her, what does that say about women in the military? What does that say about equality in any workplace?
Rika Basu wrote a scathing column for Iowa's Des Moines Register, calling the 7 male justices' decision embarrassing.
I think a female justice working through her own first-hand experience and perspective would have had a different take on it.
Melissa filed yet another appeal, and in a surprise just last month, perhaps because of the public outcry.
Can I just say this dentist needs a little Novocaine in Mr. Happy?
The High Court agreed to reconsider their earlier ruling, a rare occurrence. But the same 7 justices came up with the same ruling, clarifying that you can be fired because the boss's spouse views the relationship as a threat to her marriage. Melissa is out of legal options. She thinks it's laughable a jury of her peers will never get to decide if she was wronged. So, naturally, she brought her case to Comedy Central.
Melissa wants to clean teeth. She shouldn't have to worry about her boss's dirty mind. That's why I invited her to give me an oral exam in Hollywood, where women are never objectified.
This is the standard issue scrub suit and lab coat she wore to work. But this is the outfit she wore on Tosh.0.
Good for her. I think it was her way of saying how ridiculous these allegations about her were.
He called you the best dental assistant he ever had. Why haven't you gotten back into the industry?
I think my biggest fear is trusting someone. Trusting somebody that I have to work that close to. wouldn't want to be hurt again.
Today, the former dental assistant who, by day, was earning a good salary with benefits, has lost her livelihood. Now, scraping by on tips, she's waiting tables at a sports bar by night.
It's not an easy job. Very demanding, always on your feet.
But she's lost something else, even more important to her: precious time with her children.
What is life like now?
I tuck them in 2 nights a week. That's it.
Do you ever see Dr. Knight around town?
No. This is his lawyer. He comes and eats at the restaurant that I work at. And I can either pick my head up and go with it, or I can walk away with my tail between my legs, and I'm not gonna let that happen.
So, was the dentist courageous for protecting his marriage, or does he deserve a kick in the teeth for what he did? Let us know your thoughts using the hashtag ABC2020. We'll be right back.
Next, want to turn the man in your life into Hugh Jackman without them having to exercise?
We got some work to do.
We put our fitness makeover to the test. Lights, camera, baby oil.
Don't hate him because he's gorgeous. Hugh Jackman. We know he works out like crazy and suffers for months at a time to get into shape to play Wolverine. But does it have to be that hard for everybody? Well, yes, unless you know the tricks of the trade. So we put them to the test. Could nothing but some baby oil, a razor, and a very good photographer turn your fat into fit? And with this, we would like to welcome our new nutrition and wellness editor, Dave Zinzenko, to 2020.
Nice. Perfect. Go on, ladies. Feast your eyes on him. Hugh Jackman, fitness icon, box office superstar, and this month's Men's Fitness magazine cover model.
Hey, baby.
We know you've probably wondered what it would be like to wake up next to the boy from down under.
Looking good.
Or thought, why can't my husband have Hugh's rock-hard, Aussie abs? While you were dreaming, consider this. To become this summer's ultimate sex symbol, Wolverine, Jackman put on 25 pounds of lean muscle, ate all natural foods for 6 months, and scarfed down 6,000 calories a day.
Look over your shoulder to the right. Yeah, that's perfect.
There's definitely a lot of diet, a lot of training.
Drop the arm down.
Fitness model Ryan Hughes says getting amazing abs and broad shoulders requires hours in the gym, but warns there's a whole weight loss industry out there that claims you can go from flab to fab in no time.
You're always going to have people trying to take shortcuts, but the bottom line is to get real results, you need to put in the time.
Okay, maybe some of those amazing weight loss ads are legit, but Andrew Dixon says, buyer beware. The Los Angeles-based trainer recently set out to prove how easy it is for the pumped-up weight loss industry to fake us out with those too good to be true before and after photos.
I just let the gut hang out, shaved my beard, shaved my chest, got the lighting optimal.
6-pack abs in less than 60 minutes? I decided to put Dixon's tactics to the test. This week, I hit the streets of New York with my good friend, Hugh, in tow, searching for a few good men willing to take part in an instant fitness fakeover with just lights, cameras, and a whole lot of attitude.
Think we could get you on the next cover of Men's Fitness?
Probably not.
At first, we strike out.
Shirt says just do it. I'm just saying.
Even this 23-year-old with a solid 6-pack didn't play ball.
Let's see what you got. I got it. All right. Thanks. Till next time.
But then we saw him as if by fate.
Want me to put you on the cover of Men's Fitness? Think you're up for it?
Wolverine wannabe, Casey Braxton.
You don't think you can look like that? Come on, man. It's Jackman. Come on.
Could we convince 33-year-old Casey to let his inner Jackman claw himself out?
Yeah, I don't know about the abs, though. I like to eat too much, but I think we can do it.
And so, Casey was in.
Sorry, Spidey. It's just not your weekend.
18-year-old Mitch Pacer from New Jersey.
Yes, you, right? Sure.
On board, too. Still, I wanted to clench this, so we head downtown to where we are all but certain to find some fat content in the trendy meatpacking district.
So I spotted a friend. He's having brunch. I'm gonna try to see if he's game for this. So hey,
Kurt Walters from Brooklyn was enjoying his Eggs Benedict until I showed up.
And the whole idea is we're gonna give you a little tan, oil you up, get you appropriate manscaping, and we're gonna make you look 25 pounds thinner.
What the viewers don't know is that he's 50. So to recap, 3 guys
guys ready to strip down,
Take it off.
trim up, and take part in 2020's first ever Ultimate Fitness Fakeover. Blocks away, we've arranged to take those ever important before, and with a little prompting, the shirt was off, his gut glaring. Next up, Mitch, who quickly lost his smile. Suddenly, we lost ours too. Is that a farmer's tan he's sporting?
Really sideways?
And finally, 50-year-old Kurt, self-proclaimed artist by day, silver fox by night.
But just like kind of like slope everything, that's perfect.
He was going to need more than a coat of paint to make himself camera ready.
Were we gonna keep your mask on?
Yes. Upstairs, the men's fitness magazine Dream Team, a stylist, a groomer, the photo director. And sticking with Andrew Dixon's predict, we gave them just 60 minutes to snap those six-packs.
You have two brothers.
This will be quite a harassment deal for me.
There were lots of touch-ups,
You know, we do this when I got a date.
clean-ups, and plenty of last-minute sit-ups. Then it was time for the big reveal. An hour ago, Casey was thrilling tourists in Times Square for tips. Would all that manscaping make him a sexy superhero, or our first Fakeover Zero? Remember, this was the before. And now here's the after.
It's like the retired superhero comes back, ready to save the world.
18-year-old Mitch is up next. We'll see. This fall, Mitch will be a college freshman.
Yeah, that's good.
And now it looks like he might just be the next big man on campus.
You look really great.
That is surprising. Quite the deal.
Okay, our final Fakeover candidate. Keep in mind, Kurt's not so buff before.
Twist it even more around, bring your shoulders even.
And here's his ageless after.
I'm kind of in shock.
They worked it, they had lots of fun with it, which was the intention, and they look good.
You've done over 200 covers. What do you think's most important?
Personality, confidence, visual aesthetics, being a celebrity.
That'll get you on the cover of Men's Fitness.
It helps.
Next, move over, Charlie's Angels. There are some new angels in town.
Yes, Melissa.
But who are they going after this time?
I feel my hand going for my wallet even as you speak.
Coming up. '20 continues with The Naked Truth. Here's Chris Connolly.
Seaside Marina Del Rey, ever a magnet for LA's affluent. Ready to dress up and raise a glass on an evening out. No surprise that mingling with the well-heeled is a high-heeled gaggle of gorgeous young women, for whom this gathering of the wealthy is a target-rich environment. But they aren't looking for a hot car or a home in the hills. They're after these rich guys' wallets, not to do well, but to do good.
Make sure it's a winner.
There's Christina at the front, Kristen at the board, Lindsay too.
3 1 is 100. 2 for 150 or 3 for 200.
And this is a benefit for charity, so they're in sell mode.
So this is only a third of the items that are out right now.
While rocking their je ne sais quoi, nudging those once reluctant donors to hand over those precious credit cards and give till it hurts so good.
Here we go.
Do they really get these attendees to dig a little deeper? Oh yeah.
Okay, 103.
What in particular led you to make such a generous donation a moment ago?
Sucker for a pretty face.
A trio of crusading glamour goddesses, fighting for what's right. Remind you of anything? But these aren't Charlie's Angels. They're the Charity Angels, accelerated fundraising sirens for hire, putting to work their IQs, their TLC, and their LBDs.
I don't think the approach would be quite the same if we came in some overalls and a hard hat. But it could. I mean, it might be a cute look. $50,000.
Prying open, like oysters, those bountiful billfolds, and putting the in not-for-profit.
Thank you so much. As you can see, all of the Charity Angels are beautiful on the exterior, but they are far more beautiful on the interior than you can ever possibly imagine.
They're beautiful, they're brilliant, and they work for her.
Yes, Melissa.
Going to the Beverly Hills Hotel to raise money for the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles.
Model-turned-philanthropic powerhouse Melissa Nielsen. In 10 years, she's guided her Charity Angels concept to a $10 million gross, while amping up many benefits bottom line.
By what percentage can you increase
what they would normally make at a fundraiser.
60 to 100%.
Not 10, not 20, 60 to 100%.
60 to 100%.
So how'd you like this knowledge that she brought? Melissa pays each of her angels a flat rate of $30 an hour. She rocks 150 benefits a year.
Please, the charity angels are walking around right now. Open your wallets.
I don't right away ask them for their money. I want to get to know them.
Are you looking at that person just like you're looking at me now? I feel my hand going for my as you speak.
Give me your wallet. Give me your wallet. I'll spend your money.
But don't confuse these.
Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1996. Police get a 911 call from two men saying they have found a body dumped on the side of the road.
We had two gentlemen that were driving to work that morning. They observed an object on the side of the road. It looked to them at the time like a white blanket that was wrapped around an object.
Once they got out of their truck, it was immediately apparent to them that this was a body.
Fear grips the community as this is not the only body discovered in the area.
In the 1990s, there were approximately 11 murders in the Grand Rapids area and surrounding counties. Typically, it would be a murder and then the body would be found the next day or even months later.
I think people were pretty convinced that there was a serial killer on the loose in Grand Rapids.
Police exhaust all leads for this possible serial killer, but the case goes cold. Can the advent of a groundbreaking new tool for forensic investigation of genetic genealogy provide answers after all this time?
Forensic genetic genealogy is such a wonderful tool now, looking back on these cold cases. Cases that would otherwise go unsolved forever now have a chance.
Criminals who have hidden in the shadows for years find there's no escaping science and their own family DNA. Welcome to Bloodline Detectives. Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1996. It's a small city just 3 hours northeast of Chicago and is nicknamed Furniture City after its booming production industry.
I think Grand Rapids has grown as a city since I've been here. It's kind of at nighttime, it's a vibrant city. There's some fun stuff to do, and the city itself, or the outskirts, is a fantastic place to raise a family.
I don't see it as a crime-infested city by any means. But like any other big city, there's definitely crime in the area, especially in certain parts of the city.
In 1996, there were a lot of murders in Kent County at that time and in the city of Grand Rapids. As most metropolitan cities, there are times where crime does peak, and there's times where it's not as bad.
On October the 3rd, crime rears its ugly head in this small city. Two men on their way to work spot something unusual at the side of the road.
We had two gentlemen that were driving to work that morning, and they were at a four-wheel stop down in Caledonia Township, and they observed an object on the side of the road. It looked to them at the time like a white blanket that was wrapped around an object, and it appeared to them that the object was kind of in the shape of a human body. And so they stopped to check on that, and they observed blood on the outside of the blanket that was wrapped around the object.
Once they got out of their truck, it was immediately apparent to them that this was a body. And then the other one got into the truck and had to drive to a hotel to make the phone. We didn't have cell phones back then, and said that they were there waiting for the police. While he was doing that, the other gentleman stayed at the body, but apparently a number of people kept coming over and trying to get to the body and to see it, and he was just trying to keep the area clear.
Police arrive on the scene and immediately cordon off the area.
Patrol would be the first to arrive on scene, and they would confirm that it is in fact a body. And immediately upon discovering that, they would call their sergeants, who would then assign detectives to come out and take over the case.
The body was located on the side of 76th Street in Caledonia Township. It was just off the roadway, sort of down in a shallow ditch. It was wrapped in this white blanket that was actually an electric blanket, and the electrical cords were tied around that blanket and bound.
When they first got there, they combed the area for potential evidence. There was a lot of stuff that were, if you're on the side of a road, or people dumping cigarettes and beer bottles, there were plenty of those. So they preserved that, not knowing if they were related to the crime scene. Then they took the body and placed it on a gurney. They took that body to the medical examiner's office to do the autopsy. So no one actually saw anything until they got back to the morgue.
The body in the blanket is soon identified to be Sharon Hammock, a local woman who had previously strayed onto the wrong path.
Sharon Hammock was the victim that was identified. She was identified by fingerprints, and there was also a missing report that came out a short time later that she hadn't been seen since the night prior as well. She was known to be a sex worker in the southeast side of Grand Rapids. She had prior contact with law enforcement in that area. She was in her late 20s. During subsequent interviews, we learned that she did have 2 children of her own who she put up for adoption because she didn't want them to be part of the lifestyle that she was part of, which included the prostitution and drug use. She also had a family of 2 sisters that we knew about. Whenever these circumstances come up in all of our investigations into homicides, it's hard to talk to the family and tell the family what has happened to their loved one.
I had worked a long shift that day, and I remember feeling out of the sorts, like something wasn't right. And my boyfriend at the time called me, and he said, I have to talk to you when you come home. And I'm like, just tell me. And he's like, no, I'm not telling you while you're driving. I came in the door, and he said, your sister, and I knew who he was talking about because she was heading down the wrong path. He said, they found your sister, and she's dead. And I lost it. I just wanted to go be with my mom. That's all I wanted. I wanted to go be with my mom because I knew it was going to break her heart. But she knew that day was coming. When they knocked on the door, they told my parents that they had found a woman dropped on 76th and Patterson. And my mom goes, are you sure it's her? And they said, we're pretty positive it's her. And my mom lost it.
Sharon's death is not the only murder investigation in Grand Rapids.
I think the fear from this situation emanated from not only what happened to Sharon, but also at that period of time, there were several other homicides in the area that were very similar to what happened to Sharon, where these prostitutes were being found around the city in different areas, also murdered in similar ways.
In the 1990s, there were approximately 11 murders in the Grand Rapids area and surrounding counties. Typically, it would be a murder and then the body would be found the next day or even months later by someone.
I think people were pretty convinced that there was a serial killer on the loose in Grand Rapids. And it was weird because you had this series of rapes and murders that happened in that time period, and then they stopped. I think they were convinced that the serial killer took a show on the road and left.
No matter what that person does in their lifestyle, we treat all of these scenes and all of the homicides the same, no matter what the background of the individual is.
Police talked to Sharon's family to try to get a clearer picture of her final hours.
Investigators in 1996 would have started looking at acquaintances of Sharon Hammock to try to get an idea of the last 24 hours of her life and also a pattern of life for her and who she was associating with, what she was involved with, and who may have some information on what had happened to her.
She was so beautiful. So beautiful. She just got hooked up with the wrong people and was led down that path. My mother had 8 children, and I was the baby of 8. She was so protective of me. I miss so many memories with her because he chose that she was better off dead, that nobody was going to miss her. But he's wrong.
Is there a sadistic serial killer lurking in Grand Rapids? And can police find him before he strikes again? Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1996. Police get a call from 2 men who found a body wrapped in an electric blanket on the side of the road. The victim is identified as 29-year-old mother of 2 Sharon Hammock. Investigators try to identify clues left behind by her killer.
The detectives back then did a wonderful job in trying to obtain any possible pieces of evidence. So they did. They obtained cigarette butts, trash nearby, and they did everything they could to preserve any evidence on the blanket, the cords, as they collected the body.
Investigators conducted a search warrant at Sharon Hammock's house and went through the house and located things of interest to them, including beer bottles and other items that a guest would have had for fingerprints. And also, they did examine her vehicle as well for any chances of identifying a possible suspect or someone that could have been in her vehicle.
The coroner decides the best course of action is to remove Sharon's body from the scene, still wrapped in the blanket.
not knowing what's in that blanket, not knowing what evidence would be in there. I think they wanted to contain it and not opening up in an open field. Plus, there were a lot of people who were now standing around watching. So I think they wanted to be able to take the body back and preserve any potential evidence and obviously keep it out of view from others.
The Sharon hammock was found once she was unwrapped from the blanket to have her hands behind her back, tied with shoestring, and also her feet tied together and pulled up towards her hands, so that she would be laying on her stomach with her hands and feet tied together so that she could not move, and she would be rolling pretty much on her stomach.
It was a very unique situation, I believe it, for them to open that blanket up and find her bound and tied in that manner.
With each piece of evidence being removed from the victim's body, it also has to be preserved. And so each of those cords would have to be removed very carefully and placed in evidence bags to preserve any potential evidence, DNA, anything that they could down the line. And so they kind of just go from the outside in, peel away the cords, the blanket, and then look at the body. And she was also had cords wrapped around her neck and her arms and her legs.
Reviewing the autopsy photos 27 years later, they are very disturbing on just how the last moments of Sharon's life would have been.
The autopsy is critical to the investigation because it's a way for us to look for additional evidence that might be on the body, to understand what the cause of death may be, also to take measurements of potential weapons that were used. In this case, it was a knife. There was confirmed stab wounds on her head. There was also definitely indication that she had been strangled with bruises around her neck.
Sharon had bruising all over her body, which would indicate that there was a struggle with her. And one thing that I could note that I noticed from photographs is that her fingers, while she was bound behind her back, her fingers were clenched and her fingers were through the strings of the bindings that were holding her hands behind her back. So you could tell that Sharon was fighting until her last breath.
She was strangled with such force she had the pearl necklace wrapped on her neck. It wasn't used to strangle her, it was the force of the hands around the neck squeezing created an indentation of the pearl necklace on her neck. Then they will take a picture of the body in its current condition. Very often, if need be, they will clean the body, and then they obviously will start looking for causes of death. For example, there was blood in the head, so he had to ultimately shave the head to see the wounds that were on the head, obviously the neck area. Took pictures of the petechia in the eyes, and then preserved and swabbed for potential DNA and cut the fingernail clippings.
DNA was very new at the time. It was a new form of investigation, a new science. Although they knew that was a possibility, at that time evidence was taken and kept and looked into.
During the examination comes another devastating blow in this tragic case.
During the autopsy, we found out that she was pregnant when she was murdered.
Now that the autopsy is complete, Sharon's family are able to bury their loved one.
I remember having a closed casket because that's what my mom wanted. It was horrible. Horrible. I just wanted answers. I just wanted to know who took her from me.
Law enforcement is determined to provide answers to Sharon's grieving family. As DNA technology is still in its infancy, police rely on more traditional methods to find this barbaric killer.
The blood typing was the closest thing you had in 1996. There was no, obviously, way to tell if all the blood was hers or not. There was semen on the blanket, but there was nothing really could be done at that time.
There's 4 basic blood types that people have. Type O, 45% of the population has. So if you have a type that almost 50% of the population has, it doesn't really give you much information. The other 3, some of them are under 10%, but again, there's only 4 types, so it doesn't discriminate between people very well.
Several police agencies in Metro Grand Rapids formed a task force to investigate the prostitution murders, and the detectives assigned at that time received hundreds and hundreds of tips from people calling in reference this case.
We had a task force that included deputies and detectives from the Kent County Sheriff's Office, the Grand Rapids Police Department, and the Michigan State Police that were assigned to work some of these cold cases, and they definitely did review cases that were similar outside of our city and in other states to see if there was potentially any leads. Nothing was ever revealed with any of those investigations with regard to Sharon Hammock. They were trying to put together potential suspects by looking at boyfriends or friends of Sharon and anybody that may have been a person in common with any of these other girls that were also found.
So she's walking the street, so there's no witness, but they interviewed other prostitutes. They interviewed people that, I guess for a better term, labeled pimps, people who might know. Dozens of people they interviewed, and nobody had any information. Sometimes they'd say, okay, you might want to check this person, so then they go check that person, and then that person wouldn't pan out. Sometimes there were suspects that they would exclude, but then they might come back to them again and try to re-interview.
It was the belief of investigators that our suspect was someone that could be transient or could be a truck driver that could be traveling the roads, and that's why we're finding bodies on the sides of roads.
They threw a lot of stuff against the wall, and not much of it panned out. Possible truck driver, off-the-road truck driver. I think there was another serial killer that they thought maybe could have been involved. They weren't involved, they were excluded. It was basically a lot of guesswork.
One by one, all the leads in the case run dry.
Ultimately, we knew to solve this case, it was going to have to be DNA. This touched a lot of hands. The investigation never stopped. It touched a lot of hands in a good way, meaning like, okay, you've done everything you can do, so we're going to pass it on to this detective, see if they can come up with any ideas. But in 1996, we're very limited. We don't have cell phones. We don't have the technology, Facebook. You don't have anything like that. You don't have any ability to do much other than hair, fingerprints, DNA, and interviews, and that's what they kept doing until the DNA came through.
I came to Michigan Police in 1997 and helped start the DNA unit in Grand Rapids laboratory, and obviously the homicide had already taken place. We started doing DNA analysis at the Grand Rapids laboratory in 1999, getting more complete DNA profiles.
They were able to obtain DNA from some of the items. The blanket had male DNA on it. So then the next problem became, whose DNA is it?
All the DNA did at that time was eliminate potential suspects.
From 1996 until approximately 2007, the investigators assigned during that time scored through piles of interviews with sex offenders from the state of Michigan to try to identify anybody that might have a relationship or a connection to Sharon Hammock. At that time, they also obtained DNA samples from these perpetrators that were in prison on other offenses to see if they would match our DNA evidence that we had about Sharon's perpetrator, and none of those subjects DNA matched.
Police have the killer's DNA profile in their hands, but can't find a match. But can the advent of a groundbreaking new tool, forensic genetic genealogy, solve this gruesome murder? Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1996. Police get a call from two men who found the body of 29-year-old mother of two, Sharon Hammock, wrapped in a blanket on the side of the road. Investigators fear they have a serial killer on their hands, as Sharon's death is one of 11 similar unsolved murders in the area. After obtaining a DNA sample from the killer, police now turn to CODIS for answers.
CODIS is the combined DNA indexing system, and that's set up to track offenders convicted of crimes to potentially identify them if they've been involved in any other unsolved crimes.
Every time someone commits a crime or a felony, their DNA is extracted. It's just a simple swab. You just take that, and a sample is created, and it's entered into this system. And there's millions of people in that database. You're looking to see if someone, for some reason, has been entered into that system, whether it's from a felony, from a rape. However they get into that system, if they're in that system, you're looking for a match.
Investigators failed to receive a hit from CODIS, meaning the suspect has not been arrested for a serious crime since Sharon's murder. However, it does provide an interesting development.
In 2008, we had a CODIS association, what we refer to as a forensic hit, which is a case-to-case hit with a case out of Maryland, and exchanging information, we found it was a 2006 homicide that occurred in Maryland. We issued that report to the investigators, and then they're able to talk with the Maryland investigators, the local ones. They had some information in Maryland that pointed towards the suspect possibly being a truck driver.
That case was a young female that was also found on the side of the road. She had been killed by stabbing, and her name was Dusty Shook. She was found on the side of the highway in Maryland, and she also had DNA evidence from potentially the suspect on her, and that DNA evidence on her matched a DNA profile that was obtained from Sharon Hammock.
We had DNA, but we have no one to match it up to because he was never in the system. So basically we're up in the air. And he would either have to get caught or we would never find him.
This savage serial killer is just out of reach for the Kent County Sheriff's Office. That is until they hear that the infamous Golden State Killer has been caught using forensic investigative genetic genealogy.
With a good enough DNA profile or suspect DNA profile, that it was possible to submit that DNA for processing and utilize different databases that contain genetic genealogy to be able to find relatives of this potential suspect in order to drill down and locate or provide a name for potential suspects that were involved in any related cases like this.
So we took a portion of that extracted DNA from the electric blanket and sent it to an FGG company, Identifinders.
Identifinders International is a company specializing in forensic genetic genealogy run by Colleen Fitzpatrick, a pioneer in this emerging science.
And they developed their DNA profile, which again is different than what we look for. And the power of the FGG in that search is that they can go out to third, fourth, fifth cousins twice removed as far as relationships. And then the second part of that then is once they get these searches and some names back is doing the genetic genealogy portion. And they're building these family trees where they're finding a common ancestor. And typically in the cases I've seen, it usually goes back to the 1700s or so. I've seen it go back further. I've seen it stop in the 1800s. And once they find that common ancestor, they build the family tree back to the evidence. And typically will come back with an investigative lead of the one generation. And then the investigation starts kind of all over again for the Kent County Sheriff's Department.
Genealogists at Identifinders make a remarkable breakthrough, but now they must combine their resources with Michigan police to find their killer.
They identified a distant relative family that I started to investigate to try to get a DNA sample from one of them so that we could get closer to identifying our suspect. I knew if I obtained a DNA sample from someone in that family, and they will get us a lot closer to our perpetrator to help us to identify them. I made contact with a distant family member of our perpetrator in Cairo, Michigan. The family member was extremely cooperative with me. I explained to them the situation and what we were investigating, and they voluntarily provided me with a DNA sample. I resubmitted it to Identifinders International, and at that time, they realized that they were close to the suspect, but now they could get a lot closer, and they came up with a target family for me.
It was one of our first that we did through the laboratory, so I was hopeful and excited when they did come back with a set of brothers that they said needed to be investigated. And now it's up to the investigators to investigate that family of brothers and get a known from those brothers so that we can compare it back to the evidence in the crime.
I can actually remember where I was when the phone call came in from them. I was actually at my daughter's basketball practice and I saw the phone number that was calling me and I knew it was probably good news, and in fact it was. Genealogist Linda Doyle told me over the phone that she had just forwarded me an email and she had identified a target from a family that she believed was going to be my perpetrator. Perpetrator was one of 4 biological male sons of Wilfred and Donna Artman.
Kent County Sheriff's Office are now closer than they have ever been to solving this case. They look into all 4 brothers' backgrounds to try to find the likely suspect.
We knew the perpetrator was male, so we had to go through and identify which one of the brothers had ties to Grand Rapids and look for anything in his background which would lead us in the direction that he would most likely be our perpetrator. And one of the 4 brothers had an extensive criminal history for sexual assault, and he, at one point, was a resident of Grand Rapids in the 90s.
And when we did background investigations on these 4 brothers, it became very apparent right away that one of the brothers, Gary Artman, was more likely the suspect that we needed to focus on.
So Gary was in the military for 3 years. He was discharged for a sexual assault while he was in the military. While he was awaiting trial for that sexual assault, he raped a 15 and 16-year-old girl at knife point multiple times. He was convicted of that rape and got sentenced to 16 to 30 years. He only did 11 of those years.
After he got out of prison, he moved to the Grand Rapids area, which is where he resided during the time that Sharon Hammock was found murdered.
There was another sexual assault during his time in prison, and he was investigated as a potential suspect. And we read those reports, and they were pretty telling, which included a statement made by him to one of the deputies that the reason he was even in prison in the first place is that he was leaving witnesses. In other words, he didn't kill his victims.
When I saw Gary Artman's criminal history and started reviewing some of the prior police reports of the violence of his sexual assaults on these victims from the early 1980s and late 1970s, sometimes you just know that this is the guy we need to target, and this guy matched everything for what we were looking for the murderer of Sharon Hammock.
He was a recluse. He was an over-the-road truck driver. He didn't have many close friends. We talked to his brothers, talked to the victims of the sexual assaults. They all painted the same portrait, a very dark, scary man who they were all afraid of, uncomfortable with, capable of the heinous acts that we're talking about. That was a pretty consistent theme. All those things raised our eyebrows to the point where we knew we were really on the right path, but it wasn't enough just to stop there. We had to keep taking all the steps.
Police are almost certain they have their serial killer, but they need concrete evidence for an arrest.
We continued to monitor where he lived at the time, which was in Florida. Continued to learn who he was working for and try to learn what his potential routines were. And we also started to ping his cell phone. We were able to get his cell phone information. We were pinging his phone so we could track where he was located at the time. We had meetings with the Kent County Prosecutor's Office, along with several detectives, and we decided that based on the evidence that we had enough to get a warrant for his arrest, based on the information that we had obtained.
The net is now closing in on Gary Artman. Is he the man who so cruelly dumped Shannon's body on the side of the road back in 1996? Grand Rapids, Michigan, police are reinvestigating the 1996 murder of 29-year-old Sharon Hammock, whose body was found dumped on the side of the road. After no solid leads for over 20 years, forensic investigative genetic genealogy has led detectives to Gary Artman, a truck driver with a propensity for violence. Now they close in to arrest the suspected serial killer.
I was involved in tracking Mr. Artman while he was moving towards the state of Mississippi. I had contact with the Mississippi State Police, and we were able to, based on his cell phone location data and knowing that he was driving a certain type of truck, they were able to locate him on the highway and make an arrest.
Stop! Put both hands on your head. Get down on your knees. Watch your legs. Watch your feet.
On September 22nd, 2022, we conducted a traffic stop on the highway in Mississippi. From that traffic stop, Mr. Artman was located as the driver of that semi-truck, and he was taken into custody at that time.
He was somewhat cooperative with investigators at that time and officers on the scene, and it was just surreal for me at that time because there was always such a huge concern that we didn't know if he would have the tendency to go out and continue doing violent things to people. So once he was in custody, that was a relief to all of us investigators at the Kent County Sheriff's Office. Now we had to continue doing our job so that he wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else.
He's arrested and taken to the jail in Mississippi. At the jail, he has read his rights and he waives his rights and he does an interview for about 3 hours with the Sheriff's Department.
With any interview like this, our goal obviously is to hopefully get a confession. Because it had been so long since the homicide took place, we wanted to not only get a confession, but first of all, confirm a lot of the things that we had found in his background. My intention was to start out in the past and hopefully have him talk to me about what his timeline in life was, especially after he got out of prison. And he was very open to talking about that.
He denied killing women, openly admitted that he used prostitutes in Grand Rapids frequently. He acknowledged that he thought women in general, but particularly prostitutes, were beneath him. They were just objects. He actually used the word, they're pieces of meat.
How did you look at these women that led you to do these things?
You want the truth? Yeah. Piece of meat. Okay. Business is a piece of meat. Here's money. Get me off. That's it.
The demeanor that I reviewed from watching his interview and also from the traffic stop was he didn't seem surprised that he was arrested for a murder. He was very calm, would answer questions. To me, thinking, if you were being accused of a murder, you would think that you would be putting up a defense to the investigator saying, I didn't do this, but Gary Artman didn't really ever say that and just acted like he didn't know what we were talking about.
1996, Sharon Hammock, your DNA on her.
No, that ain't me. I did not do something like that. I know that. I might have had her, but I did not do that.
He denied being part of what happened to Sharon this whole time. I brought it up several times. I told him that we knew that he had murdered Sharon based on the evidence that we had. And he never really reacted to that. We had previously gotten some information from one of his recent coworkers, a female. She had said that when he left his employer, he said it's a good thing that I'm leaving or something bad might have happened. I brought that up to Gary Artman, and he immediately reacted. He became incredibly angry. He was swearing at me. I was very surprised by it because up to this point, he hadn't had much of a reaction. And I said, Gary, why are you so angry at me for saying that? He said, well, because it's a lie. And I said, Gary, I've called you a murderer to your face this whole time and you never once reacted. And he said, well, that's because I can't defend that. It was the first time that he had had a significant reaction, and it was the first time that I saw his short temper.
During the interview, detectives take a DNA swab from Gary Artman to confirm without a doubt that he left the biological sample on the blanket Sharon was wrapped in all those years ago.
During that interview, we did take a moment to take a DNA sample from him and immediately had that shipped back to Michigan for comparison with the MSP labs.
They flew the buccal swab to us, and that's kind of a pretty straightforward test. And I think we turned that around in 6 hours with a report out in like a total of 8 hours.
The buccal swab is a match. After all this time, police can finally inform Sharon Hammock's grieving family that the man who has caused over 25 years of pain has finally been caught.
We thought that they just gave up, and after my mom died, never heard anything from anybody. And then one day a detective knocked at my sister Terry's door and said, we can't wait to tell you this, but we've solved your sister's murder. I looked up at my mother and I said, we finally got justice, Mama. We're gonna get justice for her. And I'm sorry you're not here, but you're gonna be up there celebrating with her.
Before taking Artman to trial, Kent County Sheriff's Office and district attorneys want to make sure they have an airtight case, so they conduct a search warrant on his properties.
Part of the information that we received during the interview was the fact that he had a storage unit where he lived in Florida. And based off that information, we were able to obtain a search warrant for that storage unit in Florida and conducted a search there. During that search, we located several journals that appeared to be writing from Gary Artman. We located several different Bibles with scriptures highlighted and other writing with Bibles as well. We located women's panties and women's bras that were put in a bag that was in the storage unit as well. And all these items were taken back to Michigan for further review.
He was a man that kept journals. He wrote down all of his feelings, quotes. He basically told us about his hatred for women. Any woman in high school that turned him down, it stemmed this hatred and anger, and he thought, if they're not going to give me what I want, I'm going to take it from other women. And that's what he started doing.
He had many writings about women, specifically prostitutes. A lot of his writings, he referred to these prostitutes as slaves. He referred to his work as being told by God that it was his work to do whatever he was writing about.
He talked about murdering women out of morality. It was like his right to do. He mentioned raping 152 girls and showed no remorse for that. Given his meticulous notes and the things that he collected and kept, I believed that there are at least 152 women that he raped.
Equipped with plenty of evidence, Kent County District Attorneys are now ready to face Gary Artman in court.
My goal for this trial was to tell Sharon Hammock's story without her being here, really focusing on her as a person and the brutal way that he treated her, and just painting that picture for the jury. They were filled with heartbreak and compassion For Sharon, they did not judge her in any way. Some of the quotes that were read from Gary Artman's journal in court, their faces changed to hatred and disbelief that there is somebody out there that is so monstrous.
He showed zero signs of remorse, did engage, and not in a good way. He would act up, say some funky things during the course of trial, like he commented on his knots and how good they were. When we put the part about him saying women are just a piece of meat, he openly acknowledged they are in the courtroom. The sense we got was the jury was disgusted by him. I think it wasn't just that he killed and raped her. I think the volume of rapes, he admitted to 150 rapes in his letters. He explained some of his rationale in some of his journals, and I think they were disgusted by him. I think it's hard not to be.
It does not take the jury long to decide the rest of Gary Hartman's future.
The hardest part waiting for a jury to come back on a verdict, especially one that you feel so passionate about and you are so sure that he is the one that has done this and that he really needs to be held accountable. This guy cannot be walking free again. He is such a danger to women.
Sometimes this can take a while. Some murder cases could take, 2 days. The prosecutors and the detectives, we decided that we were just going to walk down the street to grab something to eat. Well, while we were ordering our food, we got a call from the court saying the jury had already reached a verdict.
The only time I think I get a little bit nervous is when the jury's coming back in after they have a verdict. And there's that unknown moment where you don't know what they're going to say or do. But it was a 30-minute verdict, so we felt pretty comfortable. When you have a 30-minute verdict, it's usually favorable to the prosecution.
The jury finds Gary Artman guilty on 3 counts: open murder, felony murder, and first-degree criminal sexual conduct. He is sentenced to life in prison.
Even though he made it that long without getting caught, I'm glad for the family that they were able to get their closure with this trial.
Is there still heartache? Yes. There will always be heartache. I prayed to God that he would give me the answer. That's all I ever wanted for her was justice. She deserved that. That monster can't hurt nobody else.
I'm confident that Gary Artman thought no one would care. Because she was a prostitute, I don't think he thought anybody would care a year later. I didn't think he thought anybody would care 5 years later, and I definitely don't think he thought anybody would care 27 years later.
No matter what that person does in their lifestyle, we treat all of these scenes and all of the homicides the same, no matter what the background of the individual is.
I miss so many memories with her because he chose that she was better off dead, that nobody was going to miss her. But he's wrong.
Without the incredible work of the Bloodline detectives and the utilization of forensic investigative genetic genealogy, this case would not have been solved.
Boy, we've come a long way since 1996. Between cell phones, technology, DNA, familial DNA. And there's just so much more we can do in solving crimes and giving people their justice today.
Forensic genetic genealogy is such a wonderful tool now, looking back on these cold cases. It changes the game. Cases that would otherwise go unsolved forever now have a chance.
I think the highlight of this case was just seeing how this genetic genealogy can work with these cold cases. And it gives me hope that there's additional cases that can be solved in the same manner.
Now Sharon's family can finally close this painful chapter of their lives.
I loved the way we hugged each other, and we always told each other we loved each other. In my last conversation with her, it wasn't very nice. And we didn't end the conversation with "I love you," and I know she knows I loved her, and just as much as I know that she loved me. She's a beautiful person that went down the wrong path, and I wish she wouldn't have, because she was beautiful. Her smile, her soul, everything. She was a beautiful person, and she did not deserve to have her life ended at such a young age.
At the time, we had over a dozen similar incidents in the Grand Rapids area during the late 1990s, and if I was able to interview him again, the most important thing I would want to know is what other homicides out there was he a part of?
Xin chào tất cả quý vị và các bạn. Hôm nay mình xin giới thiệu quý vị và các bạn bài hát tiếng hát Cinderella. Ngày nào em tuổi 15, em hay nghe tôi người đánh đàn, tiếng đàn làm nỗi nhớ mênh mang. Rồi thời gian dần trôi mau, em không nghe tôi giao phím đồng, mà chỉ len lén bên sông.
My father was a tireless advocate for the law. He was a criminal prosecutor. Some say ruthless, others say righteous. Yeah, cut from the same cloth. I can't really remember who I was before I became a cop. It's my job to make bad things happen to bad people.
What we feel now bridges the distance between bottomless grief and profound rage. He was my uncle, but he was also my friend. I urge the person who's responsible for this to come forward and give us some peace.
To be gay, it did have a certain amount of danger to it, that lifestyle at that time.
The building was full of people. It wasn't some random act. People knew more than they were saying.
Why would anybody do this? Why?
My brother was my dearest, dearest friend. He understood me. He adored my children.
The things that I think about that might have happened to my brother that day and that night, I think the biggest focus is his shock and pain and horror. I feel always the grief, and I grieve for what might have been.
Can you tell me a little bit about Dave as a brother?
He was my best friend. I could confide in him about anything or discuss anything. It's hard to believe this actually happened to such a wonderful person.
These are people that have had so much pain, so much loss, dealing with people that have lost someone through murder. How can you make it better? You can't.
If there's new information or something in the news, we wonder if maybe there's a connection between this case of my uncle's and another murder.
What we would like to do is to look further into the circumstances of how and why David was taken. We're looking for your blessing, your permission to allow us to undertake that journey, if you will, and bring you along.
Absolutely.
I've been a cop and a professor of criminology for years, and I've used that experience to assemble a squad of civilian subject matter experts. They must approach each case completely unbiased, to not box themselves into conventional thinking, to bring fresh eyes and new technologies to the table. Their job, and mine, is to investigate the coldest of cold cases, the murders that time forgot. David Buller, Professor of Fine Arts at the University of Toronto, fourth homicide in the City of Toronto in 2001. David was openly gay and well known in the local gay community. Much respected by his students, who saw him as something of a luminary, an inspiration. David Buller was last seen approximately 1 p.m. on January 18th, 2001, entering an elevator here, the Connaught Building on the main campus of the University of Toronto. In this building on that day, there was a retirement party on the main floor with at least 150 guests attending. David had a 6:30 p.m. lecture scheduled that same night. The class assembled in anticipation for the lecture. As usual, they were surprised to find that a typically punctual David Buller had not shown up. The next morning at 7 a.m., a faculty cleaning lady enters the office and finds David dead on the floor. The victim of multiple stab wounds, and she promptly notifies the police.
I mean, the university you think of as a safe haven, and to have something so dramatic and awful take place there would just be horrifying.
Naturally, speculation arose as to who might have done this, who would be motivated to do such a thing, and take great risk in doing so. Are we dealing with a student? Are we dealing with an outsider?
David's sister mentioned to me that there's a student who's been bothering a number of the professors.
Are there any questions, first of all, with respect to the facts in this case?
Was the office a very bloody mess, like a real mess?
Yes.
As one would think, yes.
Was there a trail of blood leading out of his office?
There is no evidence of blood in the corridor or anywhere else outside the office.
And no footprints?
No.
In terms of the stabbing, Renee, the fact that he was stabbed 7 times and there were no indicators of blood trails, who could explain that?
It depends on, whether he was struggling or moving around after several wounds had been inflicted, or whether he had already been subdued somehow, knocked out, and then stabbed. So more information about the crime scene and about the condition of David's body when it was found will definitely be helpful.
Was he found face down on his back?
That should be amongst the coroner's notes.
How much of the building was cordoned off in the initial investigation?
The entire floor would have probably been the inner crime scene, and the building would have been sealed off.
If this was my uncle, I wouldn't stop until I turned every stone. I would search every avenue and try everything I could. There's a killer out there.
I want to hear fresh ideas about who's going to do what. Renee?
I'd like to contact the coroner to try and get a copy of the autopsy report.
Securing that autopsy report is going to be key. Antonella?
I want to see if I can get a psychological profile of David Buller's killer.
It's a place to start.
Knowing that there's a cold case here and that we have time pressure, it creates a little bit of anxiety, I would say, because we don't have a lot of time.
I'd like to visit the site.
So just to recreate the crime scene as it was?
Yeah.
Don't try to mimic what the police have done. We'll approach this with the resourcefulness that you have. It's going to require you staying on target. We talk about this as being another cold case.
The reality is, I just met David's niece and his sister, and for them, this case has never been cold. They have remained vigilant in trying to find answers about what happened to David since the day he died. They're putting their trust in you to help them find those answers.
David's murder is particularly disturbing when I picture it in my mind's eye. 7 times someone stabbed him.
How could you have that much hatred towards another human being?
Where did the killer go? How did the killer get there? How did they move so stealthily through a building with at least 150 people, 1 floor down at a retirement party? To me, there's just more questions than answers. One of the main challenges for the squad in looking into David Buller's murder is the fact that in speaking with David's family and friends, he seems to have led a compartmentalized life. He had his life as an artist, his life as a professor, and his life as a gay man. The question then is, did the killer come from one of these many lives that David led? Or was this just a random act of extreme violence? I'm on my way to meet David's niece, Karen. Since 2001, she's been continuously pushing for answers in the murder of her uncle. It's my opinion that her insights on this case are essential to our new investigation. Do you think that the sort of sensationalist reportage around David's murder may have influenced the police investigation?
Yeah, I think it could have shaped the investigation early on. I think that the police were making assumptions based on the fact that David was gay, thinking, well, that person must have done something risky, that person must have put himself at risk. It seemed implausible that this could be a random crime, and hate crimes so often are.
In any cold case investigation, family theories about what may or may not have happened are important. They help guide investigators. In David's case, we need to figure out whether or not this was a random act of violence, a hate crime, or what's known as a personal cause homicide, meaning someone acted in order to carry out a specific objective.
What makes sense, in my mind, is that the person who killed David was known to David, and that person was very familiar with the Connaught building and knew where to find David.
So I think we should go and check out every floor. Look at the hallways, the washrooms, exits, and entrance points. This is a great wee building.
The neo-Gothic architecture of One Spadina looks to me like something straight out of a horror flick. Knowing that a murder took place just adds to that creepy atmosphere. How badly do I want to see the inside of this building? Very. It's my hope that we're able to try to find this office for the first time. Just get a rough sense of how labyrinthine is the interior of this building. Locked. Let's see if this one's open.
1, 2, 3. So there's 3 floors. So there's the one entrance side. That was for deliveries, maybe? Another door there. So there's another door here.
This is an exit only, I guess. Oh, that's just great.
Asbestos removal in progress.
They're making interior modifications. So our initial idea of quickly running in there, getting a sense of the location, is a little bit more complicated now.
To kill a man in his place of work in the middle of the day takes a certain kind of perpetrator. I'm meeting with Dr. Giorgio Lacqua to build a psychological profile of David Buller's killer. And given that he was murdered at his office versus his home, what can that tell us about the crime itself?
Let's say there's somebody you don't want to see anymore, you're this grand old friend or somebody you don't want to interact anymore, you will not let this person come into your house. But if it's a public building, the door is open, it probably would have been easier for this person to blend back in after committing such high emotional crime.
So this person is hiding in plain sight, as they would say.
That's, I think, what we're seeing here.
The person would have cleaned the scene, no DNA evidence was found. Would that have been done, I guess, immediately after the murder?
There's an explosion in emotionality and then a return to normality. At that point, the person recovered all his ability to think straight, and if there was anything that should be or could have been put in order, was done.
What about the choice of weapon, Giorgio? What can that tell us?
It's likely that there was some familiarity because the person was able to get very close to the personal space of the victim. If you want to kill somebody with a blade, you really have to be very close.
The use of a knife can reveal a lot about a perpetrator. The act itself was intimate and emotional. It tells us that the person that murdered David likely knew him.
Oh, I was a bit disappointed to see in going through David's autopsy report that where the injuries are supposed to be marked and charted, that the injuries weren't actually transcribed there.
Every medical examiner operates a little bit differently. Although the diagrams weren't used by a pathologist in David's case, he did provide detailed descriptions of each wound in terms of their location on the body, their depth, angle of entry, etc. I'm translating those descriptions into a visual representation and demonstrate visually the pattern of external stab wounds. It's really essential to view them in the context of the body so that we can determine the position of the victim relative to the perpetrator.
It looks like we have transversely orientated complex gaping stab wound just above the nipple level, 6 stab wounds to the anterior chest and 1 to the left back.
So although there's only one wound, there are multiple tracks inside the body. We just can't see them. Wounds inflicted with a knife really are a dynamic event. To be able to see the angle of entry, the depth, it all comes together to build a picture of just how that interaction took place.
So we have a total of 4 abrasions associated with the stab wounds on the chest.
It seems as though we're looking for a weapon that will have a single blade, but the base of the handle where it connects would have had the ability to cause an abrasion at both ends. Understanding the sequence of blows and the position of David relative to the perpetrator when they were inflicted will really help us put together this picture of whether they are already in close proximity when the attack began and how it unfolded. Once we know what the internal track is like, then we'll be able to map more precisely what the position of the weapon was. So let's start with the first external wound.
Towards the sternum, it didn't pierce very deep. So we actually have 2 tracks originating from this surface wound.
Certainly the perpetrator used a lot of force, so perhaps their first blow was a hard one. The perpetrator delivered the blows in smooth, single action. He was able to penetrate the blade deep into David's body with really no resistance. Visualizing the arrangement of the stab wounds and realizing just how precisely they were placed makes me realize just how close the perpetrator had to get to David to inflict these wounds. He was likely standing right behind him.
Priority task for the squad at this point is determining how and why David Bullard was attacked at his office. I've deployed Peter and Daniel to go down to the university and have a close look at the crime scene.
What?
We need to determine if David not only knew his killer, but if the killer knew the layout of this building.
The issue with access to One Spadina is the contractor has taken over the site, sincerely, the Office of Space Management. The last possible physical record of David Buller's case is in the process of being destroyed, and all I can do is walk by and just kind of watch it day by day. I believe there have been conversations with a number of my staff on insurances would not allow this. Unfortunately, this request is not possible due to a number of challenges. Unfortunately, not possible, not allowed it, not allowed it. Regards, University Planning, Design, and Construction. Hey Mike, we just got back from One Spadina Crescent, and it turns out that it's actually closed for asbestos removal.
Until when?
Actually, this building is going to be undergoing a $50 million transformation until 2015.
Alright, so I want you to continue to make efforts to get access. This is obviously, when we're under a tight timeline, not good news, right? Better news next time, right?
Fingers crossed. Not having access to the building is incredibly frustrating, especially because it's so pivotal in this investigation. We need to examine the crime scene to unravel and put together the pieces.
If we can't get physical access, the next best thing is going to be the blueprints for the building. I want to see those drawings and see them used in configuring a 3-dimensional retroactive crime scene model.
Map all the paths away from David's office.
Right.
And see where that gets us.
to, first of all, get a feel for the culture and feel of the art faculty at the time. Hopefully, by speaking to students or faculty, I can try and tap into any rumors or gossip or just what people thought did happen. I got completely shut down at the university. Nobody would talk to me about this case, period. I've kind of hit brick walls. So I've decided I'm going to go and do what I do. I'm going to go out and canvass a few areas near the university. Try and find somebody who knew him, had a beef with him, or know someone that had a beef with David. I believe it was someone that knew him, and I believe it was meticulously planned. I'm working on a case, David Buller.
I spoke control like as Thursday goes. I hope you solve it.
I've been shut down completely. It's almost like this academic administrative wall. I feel like I've let the squad down to some degree because that's my thing, is getting people to talk. I'm used to getting results, and I got nothing.
Better understanding David's relationship with his students may prove to be a critical piece of information in determining whether or not his murder was what we call a personal cause homicide. We heard rumors that David was dealing with a disgruntled student, but we can't get anyone at the university to speak with us. So I'm going to meet with David's sister, find out what exactly she knows. I wanted to just ask some follow-up questions with respect to the facts in issue. Did he talk to you at all in passing about his classes that term?
There was a certain amount of tension because there was a student at the school that had been threatening some of the professors, and he was one of them. Later, I learned that the student was walking around at the back of the class with a knife in his hand. He was tense.
This incident with the knife, was this in one of David's classes?
Yes.
Was he genuinely concerned for his safety?
Yes.
I know the police had an alibi for this angry student, but we need to go back. We need to have a second look at that same information again.
Even though I'm getting stonewalled everywhere I turn in this case, I just got to keep at it. Nose to the grindstone. Something's got to come out of it somehow. Hello. Oh, no, don't worry. It's cool. I'm not a cop. You might be able to help me, possibly. January 2001, at the Connaught building right here at Spadina Circle. Professor David Bullard, stabbed 7 times.
You know, Don is his student.
Oh, you know a student?
Yeah, Dawn is the professor's student.
Does she come here?
She will only Saturday afternoon here.
Thank you so much. See you then. Bit of a breakthrough here. Arranging to meet with someone at 4 p.m. on Saturday that knew David at the time of the murder. Finally something.
Based on scientific evidence and the civilian squad's own findings in consultation with experts, it appears very likely that David Buller knew his killer. We have conflicting information about the time of David's death. It turns out that he may have been threatened and even stalked during the final months and weeks of his life by someone known only as the angry student.
The student was walking around at the back of the class with a knife in his hand.
I need to get the squad on both of these new developments stat. All right, one of the names that keeps coming up, it's not necessarily a name as much as it is just a label, this angry student.
It's discounted by police.
He was discounted by police.
I don't think that's any reason for us to discount him.
He was eliminated in 2001 because of his being captured on CCTV inside a bank with a timestamp that was deemed to be accurate that would put him far enough away from the location of David's murder at the time of David's death.
So, Mike, if we know the time that he was at the bank, do we also have an exact time when he was murdered?
Renee, on the autopsy report?
The autopsy report didn't indicate how the postmortem interval was determined, so I have no confidence that that particular time that was on the report is accurate.
We already know that during the course of David's murder, during the struggle, the power cord for his computer was knocked from the wall. This created a time and date stamp on the computer's hard drive. Sometime between the final keystroke on that computer and when the power source was disconnected from the wall is when David died. And between those two events, both of which are recorded on the computer's hard drive, we have a fairly firm time of death. We can compare the CCTV footage and the timestamp on that to the timestamp on David's computer, and from there we can figure out if there was enough time between that time of death and when this angry student was last seen on the CCTV footage to get from that bank to the university. The computer is our best eyewitness.
Here we are at the bank where this person of interest started on CCTV at 1:07 p.m. in this bank, and the question is, does his alibi hold up? So I'm gonna start off my stopwatch, and we can head out now.
Okay, perfect.
We're going to 1 Spadina Crescent, the Connaught Building.
This goes to Wharton Station, right? Okay. If it takes longer than 1 hour and 22 minutes to get to 1 Spadina, then his alibi holds. We know that this student left that bank at 1:07, and so that gives an hour and 22 minutes. There we go. So we've beaten that by a good amount. We just discovered that we cannot discount this student based on his CCTV time alone, because we can very easily travel, on a weekday afternoon from that bank to the building's front door in about 45 minutes, no problem.
I'm meeting a woman named Dawn, who was a student of David Buller's. What interested me about Dawn, first and foremost, was she was actually willing to speak to me, because we'd had a lot of problems on campus getting anyone who is a student or faculty member to speak to us whatsoever. Dawn, how did you know David?
I had him for a full year, first year art studio. He was very easy to be around, very helpful, very accessible if you needed anything.
Okay.
But he always had that professional distance.
Were there any rumors right off the hop about who may have done it?
Somebody off the street, maybe a crackhead somehow came in, got into the office.
Any indication towards him dating or seeing students socially?
No, absolutely not.
Not at all, eh?
And I never saw anybody that could be like a friend or a lover or whatever come to see him at class.
Never like that?
No.
What about the other faculty members? As far as you know, did he get along with them, or was there any professional beefs or anything like that you ever heard of? Rumors of?
I wouldn't say they seemed exceptionally friendly with each other.
Well, we've been having a lot of trouble getting faculty and students to talk to us about this case.
Well, I would think if there's students that know something, that they might, be afraid of a repercussion. And staff, I would think, they just want it to go away. It just looks bad.
In this case, for the students or staff not to want to say anything at all, there's got to be a compelling reason there. It makes you wonder, could the killer still be in the building?
They want it to go away, and I bet they want you to go away.
No question that David knew his killer, and the angry student is looking like a viable person of interest. To firm up his alibi and also establish a precise or near precise time of death, I'm going to have Peter conduct a forensic computer analysis of David's files. The end of activity on that computer should indicate the time of death and will also help us confirm whether another student had enough time to get from point A to point B and commit this murder.
Where I delve into the details, where I'm struck by how the criminals managed to pull this off, how they're still out there, how there's no answers. Coming from physical sciences, I'm a fan of getting answers.
What's going on here? I see a kind of a retro desktop here.
Yeah. Well, here we have an iMac, very similar to what David would have used in his office. I talked with Lisa Sandloss. She tells me that his original machine has been disposed of. She was able to give me, though, these screenshots of the original forensic investigation. The reason I wanted to get my hands on this is this discrepancy in the times here. The last written time recorded on the file is 2:10 p.m., but the log contents themselves begin with the correct date and then 1:10 p.m.
What would account for the discrepancy, do you think?
Well, the only way I could explain this discrepancy would be to hypothesize that David was in the habit of leaving daylight saving time turned on. That advances the displayed time by 1 hour.
This 1 hour is important in terms of establishing time of death and firming up the quote-unquote angry student's alibi. Whether his computer was set to daylight standard time or daylight savings time, that 1 hour difference could change everything. We need to firm up when exactly that final keystroke was. That indicates roughly the time of death. The squad's been trying to track down former students of David's for weeks. Finally, Antonella has located a former student. The student is speaking to us on the condition that her identity remain a secret. Did David have collegial relationships with other faculty?
I have to say no. I also detected some kind of political jousting going on right before the end because there has to be a head of department, and I felt like someone was putting David forward for that, and there were other people who disagreed with his politics.
Who interests you in terms of this case?
They really should be looking at faculty. And someone in particular.
Not only is Peter working on solving this time of death mystery, but he and Danny are using technology to grant us access to the building.
We get in, we'll just rebuild the building virtually and see what we can glean from that model. So here we're following the point of view of someone unfamiliar with the building. Right? So they'd look back and forth, they'd have to navigate through these 150 people. I can't wait to see what the squad will do with this. Here we have the main entrance.
Where would David's office have been?
So Renee, which side of the crescent was the crosswalk on?
We need to prove whether or not David's killer knew his way around the building, and more specifically, knew his way to David's actual office.
This is great that we've got the drawings.
Danny and I have some 3D models up on the smartboard.
All right, let's have a look.
Wanted to just have a look at those. We've taken these technical drawings and we've recreated three-dimensional models of the first and second floors.
Okay.
So what we're seeing here is the path of someone unfamiliar with the interior entering the building and encountering this crowd of 150 plus people.
These are the guests at the retirement party.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So here we ascend to the main staircase and we try to make our way to David's office. Unfortunately, for this assailant, he quickly gets lost in the labyrinthine passageways. And finally, this unfamiliar person happens upon David's office.
It's not an intuitive route to his office based on the animation scheme I'm seeing and where it's located. We've also examined numerous escape routes. Each one is more complicated than the next, especially given that David's office was located on the second floor.
In the next animation, we have a much more direct route. Here we're simulating what somebody familiar with this building might have done to get to David's office.
They know exactly where they're going.
And they make their way to the second floor.
Up the main staircase. So 2 rights, end of the hall.
And then there's David's office.
So that's what the route would look like. This strongly suggests premeditation or familiarity with the building.
The middle of the daytime, with that many people in the building, to get in and out, very bold, calculating, for certain. Someone who is clever.
Maybe the person was already in the building in the morning, had been there for a couple of hours.
The additional question is then the exit route.
Yes, so and we have that as well.
Slide. Excellent.
We're looking at the second floor here. The blue square is David's office.
Green are the elevators.
If you look at these possible exit routes, there's no blood transfer. We already know from examining the blueprints that there were bathrooms located near David's office, that there was art studios located nearby. Studios, like bathrooms, have sinks. This may in part explain why no trace evidence like blood was found near the murder scene. So you're talking about someone who not only was familiar going in, but then exiting was discreet enough and careful enough to not leave any transfer evidence anywhere along this entire expanse.
Somebody had time to perhaps change into different clothes.
I think Dania is bang on here. I think we're looking for someone who was already in the building. In fact, someone we can describe as belonging to the building. Someone who didn't have to run and hide, either before or after David's murder.
To be able to escape without leaving any evidence behind, no signs of blood spatter. There are some very deliberate steps that were taken by the perpetrator to cover their tracks.
All possible explanations lead back to Peter's hypothesis that we're talking about someone who knows the layout of the building and is a familiar user of the building.
Right from the beginning in this case, I was looking for answers. Finally getting some of those, it's an amazing feeling just to know that we can reconstruct what happened. So it feels great.
The more we look into this, the clearer things get. The placement of the wounds on David's body suggests he may have known his killer. The location of his office and the lack of any blood or transfer evidence in the corridor outside the office also suggests that the killer knew the layout of the building. So that, plus what our witness is telling us, suggests that we should be looking at someone within the building itself. Could be a spurned lover, could be someone from the faculty or staff. Peter and Dania threw their 3D model to simulate the killer's movements within the building. That builds a compelling case that David's murder was not a random act of violence. It would seem that it was in fact premeditated and likely committed by someone from within the university itself. That said, we don't have any concrete leads as to who this person was. At this point, it's key that we find someone who knows something and is willing to talk. Going to the art gallery to interview David's friend Andrew Ward. Andrew,
Mike,
nice meeting you. David's family describes you as one of his closest friends. So I guess my first question is, as someone who would be maybe a confidant of his, is this a suggestion that David led something of a double life? There is some misinformation about him floating around out there.
Well, I think there were people close to the police at the very beginning of the investigation that could have clouded David's personality.
Okay, how so?
You know, the police were always coming to me and asking me these ridiculous questions. And, well, you know, did David ever see any of the students?
Okay.
No, he knew there were lines you just didn't cross.
So some of the reports, a late night tryst gone awry or something like that.
Fiction.
Okay. Around Christmas 2000, so just a few weeks before David's murder, he made some suggestion that he felt that he may be in danger. Did he ever come to you with concerns about this rogue student? Is the student someone of interest in this case? No, not at all. Okay.
No.
Why?
Well, I think it's all university related for sure. I think there are other people at the university that raised a lot of red flags.
Who are these people?
Well, and just before he was killed, he stated to me that he had problems with both these faculty members.
David's murder immediately gave rise to a number of theories among his friends and family, each of whom obviously has their own biased point of view. At this point in our investigative analysis, it's crucial that the squad not focus on theories or get hung up on conjecture and focus on cold, hard facts. All right, so we're at the end. So I'd just like to hear your final findings.
On that day, there was a field trip planned for students on the second floor, which is where David's office was.
So the second floor cleared out. That rules out anyone interrupting the killer. Yeah, that can't be deemed a coincidence. It's a fascinating find, so thanks for that. Renee?
I did have an opportunity to review crime scene photographs, and combined with the results of my experiment, confirm that David was likely stabbed from behind. That was likely the first blow. I've learned really to control the emotional response to what are otherwise very visceral and dramatic scenes. The ultimate goal of all of my analysis is to provide some answers for the family. The perpetrator was likely standing directly behind him, and my best guess is that they were looking at the computer screen together when he was surprised by the wound to his back, the momentum of which likely tipped him backwards.
So this is someone he trusted enough to not only get that close, but turn his back to. Peter?
So I put a lot of time into resolving the one-time discrepancy that I found in these reports. And the computer was set to Eastern Standard Time, putting the last action recorded on the computer at 2:25 p.m. When I examined David's computer logs further, I discovered that he continued to work until approximately 2:25 p.m., giving the angry student plenty of time to leave the bank at 1:07 p.m. and make the 45-minute journey to David's office.
These findings are compelling, and I think we've got enough here to put together a final report, and I'm prepared to deliver those findings to David's family. We've hit a brick wall with our own investigation, so it's crucial that we share all of our findings with the police as well as the family. David's murder does fit within the model of what we call personal cause homicide. One of the people you all mentioned early on during the course of my meeting with you was this angry student.
Yes.
And no one was really satisfied that he could be excluded in terms of opportunity. There was sufficient time from his being on the CCTV image at the bank to when we now know David was murdered. We know that he withdrew or was in the process of already withdrawing from the university at the time, and that he left the country shortly thereafter. However, we spoke with several students, but I can tell you, people are very afraid. Their fear and reluctance suggests that there is still someone who wields some degree of power, such that they are deterred from saying anything. There is compelling evidence. This person was familiar with the building, somebody with direct access and knowledge of David's whereabouts and routine. The methodology we use and the rationale behind what we're doing is your best suspects are the ones left standing once other people are excluded. In brief, there is a strong possibility that it was a faculty member in the arts department at the university in 2001 who was David's killer.
I just feel a tremendous sense of relief.
Yeah, I do too.
And I feel very emotional right now because this is what we've wanted, was this kind of exhaustive search. If your theory is true, he didn't die because he was gay. And that is a big deal to me. And he could have. That could have been the answer, but we should have been looking at everything more closely. Thank you. Thank you very much.